kia ora koutou katoa. My name is Hanna. I'm from a venture consultancy in Auckland called Popcorn Innovation. So Popcorn aims to make the transition to a low carbon economy faster by leveraging innovation and entrepreneurship in the community space. And today I'm here to talk about Popcorn's next project called the Seaweed Initiative. So yeah, seaweed, highly effective photosynthetic organism, a water plant, but unlike its land-based counterparts, it doesn't require any water, land, no fertilizer, no feed. It doesn't require fresh water, sorry. It does require water, and it makes up a critical part of the carbon cycle, and it absorbing carbon dioxide, producing oxygen, and all the while reducing the ocean's acidity. And it also removes nitrogen and other pollutants from the water. So it really plays an incredible role in the marine environment, and people have called it the world's forest underwater. So and on top of that, like recently, it's been kind of hailed to have the potential to draw down a lot of carbon dioxide. So just in terms of a figure, it globally accounts for nearly 200 million metric tons of CO2 equivalents per year. So, and native species of brown seaweed like bull kelp and giant kelp and Eclonia radiata, they provide like awesome habitat for coastal marine life in New Zealand. Fish like snapper graze and live in amongst almost 800 unique seaweed species there are in this country. And I'll just say right up front though that the per hectare contribution of some brown seaweeds, research has seen that in terms of permanent sequestration potential, you're likely to get between 8 to 11 tons per year of seaweed that kind of floats out to like the deep ocean or derivatives of the process to go out to the deep ocean and get sunk under 1,000 meters. And that's permanently sequestered with any kind of like seaweed growing in nature. And that might seem like a lot, but I mean, given that we kind of each average somewhere between, depending on how good you are at conserving carbon, 8 to 16 tons a year, some people much lower. But still, that's not enough to really, I mean, you'd have to think about planting or conserving, like 5 million hectares for the population of New Zealand so it's not really I mean, theoretically it is possible because New Zealand has the 8th largest exclusive economic zone at 350 million hectares, but it's just not that end-all solution from a sequestration thing. But some people are looking at doing deep sea kind of like seaweed farms. But yeah, they're going to require a lot of infrastructure. So, but here is a photo I took of a New Zealand red seaweed called Asparagopsis armata, which has been found to significantly reduce the methane emission of cows. So Asparagopsis contains a compound called bromoform, which works in the gut of ruminant animals to interrupt the production of methane. Asparagopsis taxiformis, which is another species found in an Australian study, can reduce the methane in cows up to 98%. And this is by feeding them like, 1 to 2% of their diet, the seaweed. So, and given that, as Tom mentioned, like half of New Zealand's emissions come from the agriculture sector and a good proportion of those from the dairy industry, it does have potential to be kind of game changing in meeting or reducing carbon emissions. In its infancy, their biggest problem is going to be almost supply of this seaweed. So it's a potential high value scalable export, which is great from an kind of a sustainability and investment standpoint. And then, not only as a feedstock supplement, but also potentially in the form of carbon credits, because it does reduce so much of the greenhouse gases. So this seaweed and the brown seaweeds, Eclonia, are the seaweeds we're intent on investigating as a priority. So our project is focused on building technology programs to enable the study and growth of native New Zealand seaweed, which includes the research and development, some of the hatching, and early market products. So think food type products. And we want to foster collaboration with smaller growers and individual businesses to democratize some of the early stage like challenges that a lot of these people are going to be facing. Seeding and some of the physical setups and the legal environmental factors, all of which are a barrier to entry into this industry. So, I mean, we're bootstrapping at the moment, but the idea is to kind of grassroots like coordinate with other ventures that are starting in this space, and then work together to unlock some of those critical pieces that need to be hooked together in order to have an actual viable business. So at the moment, we're looking to raise some funding to set up a reticulating supply of seawater in Auckland for a hatchery, so that we can look at starting to this complex life cycle. It's not just, rip off a piece. Most of the time it's not rip off a piece and then grow it again. It's like, kind of artificially inseminating the various life cycles of Asparagopsis anyway. And up until recently, that life cycle had not been cracked. So yeah, and every species of seaweed requires kind of its own study. Even if it's another species that exists somewhere else in the world, there could be variation in how it actually is, the life cycle is completed. So yeah, and as part of that collaboration, we're looking to partner with farmers, marine farmers, and other industry groups. It's a picture of a mussel farm, and they've got lines already in the water, which is great. And then seaweed can be seeded parallel to those lines, and they actually have a symbiotic relationship with the mussels, or also oysters or finfish. So the partnership with marine farmers to place seaweed lines can increase their yields, as well as provide them opportunities to diversify and additional sources of income, either in carbon credits or other kinds of economic opportunities in the future decarbonization space. Lots of you guys know about seaweed already as a food, and maybe lesser as a fertilizer. And then even more so, there's other markets, with cosmetics, alginates in cosmetics, and health and medicinal products as well. So it's an amazing product that has a variety of properties that, when I first started this project, it was like every week there was like a new amazing thing. It's like fire retardant, or I don't know, like it can cure cancer, or I'm not going to claim that, but there's research into some of the nutraceuticals and how amazing they are for health. So yeah, and now there's a whole new class of products that are evolving, spanning everything from these like edible seaweed plastic drink cups, and health foods and alternative protein burgers and textiles and stuff. So there's like a lot of different industries that can be pursued with seaweed. So that's another reason why we're kind of embarking on this being a collaborative venture, because I feel like it has more potential to scale faster. And this is from some of my experience with popcorn in the past, is, how to marry deep tech know-how with opportunities, and to do so with limited funding or new kinds of funding models. So, and obviously when you're in an industry that has growth potential, a lot of that can actually go instead of maybe huge profits, but being scaled back, and then be able to be sustainably impacting the environmental benefit that you want. So choosing kind of those opportunities to maximize the chances of getting through with a more scaled back business model. So yeah, I mean, and then we are starting the game a little bit late in New Zealand. other countries, other areas of the world, seaweed aquaculture has been going on for generations, but we have to play catch up with, some of the research, some of the legal stuff that we're doing right now. It's not even really seaweed farming is not yet a thing, hasn't been legislated. I think there's some new rules that are kind of come in soon, and marine farm licenses are on hold. So, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done from the government side to actually allow, or, this industry to flourish. And so we're looking to recruit some more people into the group to tackle some of these kinds of challenges around, how do we navigate those hurdles for the benefit of other people that are wanting to get into this industry. So, and I think that, the inclusion of Maori in this conversation is critical, given the fact that they have stewardship over the ocean, and how to design these kinds of projects probably will differ a lot to how they see it working. Here I have a picture of a pohu bag, which is a poha bag, which is like a way to preserve fish, and it's made out of like bull kelp. So it's kind of an amazing, traditional use as packaging. And so I think, there's already a lot of intrinsic knowledge, but maybe we could learn from that and scale from that. So, and then the other thing I want to mention is that, like, there is some potential threats to this industry as well, WAKAME being one of them. Undaria is an invasive seaweed from Korea and Japan, and you probably know it best as the seaweed that you like in miso soup, and it is delicious. And the thing is that there's a market for it right now, and it's growing on lines because it's so good at propagating, but it doesn't provide habitat for, and to be honest, it's potentially going to be a threatening species to a lot of the native seaweeds. So I know that, I mean, and probably there's not a lot of people saying this, but I'm personally not interested in getting into a business that farms invasive seaweed. I know some of the large industry people that are there. It's kind of, it just needs to be very carefully managed with real advocacy and activism to make sure the government's doing the right thing, and not allowing some of those players in the market to, put profit before the opportunity, because we could also just kind of have like a wilding pine situation. So that's another thing, that being, I guess, an independent company, you have the ability to say things like that. But I know that, yeah, it's dangerous in some ways, because they're so powerful, some of these groups. And that's another reason why we're interested to not necessarily take this to be like a high growth, thing, but also looking at to build the coalition so that we can kind of get to that point of sustainability without putting profit before those environmental impacts. So yeah, and with overfishing and climate change, threatening our oceans, there's a window where we can learn enough about our native species and be able to cultivate it, harnessing its properties toward these high value projects. And so this is a photo of Bren Smith, who's he was a former fisherman, and now he's like a seaweed advocate because he realized it was harming the planet. And then he appeared on that documentary 2040, and he's the founder of Green Wave, which aims to teach seaweed farming to as many people as possible. And so he has a lot of YouTube videos and stuff online. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention was in one of my previous slides is if you are interested in seaweed foraging, which is allowed, if you want to go and get some seaweed to eat, most of the species around are edible in some way or another. There's a good Facebook page, New Zealand Seaweed Foraging, that's run by Peter Langlands, that you could join and learn a lot about how to prepare and seaweed for eating. So yeah, I mean, seaweed is a critical, important part of our marine life ecosystem. It can be central to value building in our innovation sector, and help us in resilience in food, aquaculture, and the economy. And I'd like to see us work together to learn more about seaweed and how we can reforest our coastal waters, as well as explore its potential to reshape solutions that that really don't exist right now. So yeah, I hope you guys are as excited as I am about seaweed now, and encourage others to look into it.